Hello there, kia ora, and welcome to this week's Omnibus edition, where it's a little bit shorter than usual because I ended up with a massive migraine in the middle of the week and not being able to do an extra piece. So enjoy the shortened version and reclaim a little bit of your time back, I guess. Don't forget, hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And if you haven't done so already, please make sure that you're starting to work on making a submission for the Treaty Principles Bill Select Committee process at the moment, because the more information they get, the more personalised they are, the better they have an understanding within that committee of how this impacts people from a whole bunch of different angles. So get onto that. There's links everywhere for it. You could just Google submission Treaty Principles Bill. Super, super easy. Until a little bit later, I guess, enjoy watching the rest of this week's Omnibus. Hello there, kia ora. I hear you want to write a submission for a select committee and might need some advice. So here, let me give you a bit of a hand. First, you need to know where to go to make a submission, which is, well, this website here, the Parliament website. You can also send in a submission by something called the Postal Service. Submissions that get emailed in or handed over in person to an MP don't get put into the process, so the website or the mailbag are your options for making a submission. Now, there's no limit on where submissions come from, so you don't have to be based in Aotearoa, New Zealand to submit, and anyone of any age can make a submission. Before you enter your submission, you need to fill in your details, and you can request anonymous submissions if you need to protect your identity. But if you don't, then your submission will be made publicly available on the Parliament website. And make sure you know if you're submitting as an individual or as part of a group. And that could be an iwi group, a business, a charity group, a book club, a community group. Knowing who you are speaking on behalf of and whose perspectives you want to get across is really important. You should also give what you want to say a bit of thought. For the Treaty Principles Bill, there's going to be a bunch of templates floating around from people who are both for and against it. And there will undoubtedly be AstroTurf groups run by the nastiest people with the most resources set up auto submission processes, which are just going to piss everyone off. But one thing I hear over and over from politicians is that personal perspectives are far more impactful for committee members than a heap of copy-paste form letters. It lets MPs see different angles on issues that they might not have considered. And with the Treaty Principles Bill itself, while there's been a heap of gaslighting saying things like the most disadvantaged group of people in the country who are dealing with the most prejudice are somehow getting special rights and that's not fair, or this bill doesn't change the meaning of the treaty while also trying to literally redefine what it means, that it's the latest in a long line of policy changes that ignore research-based evidence to help ensure equitable outcomes for Māori, or the fact legal experts like the 42 King's Council lawyers, the top legal minds in the country, came out saying this bill is dangerous because it literally changes the makeup of our constitutional arrangements and redefines our founding document. And the Waitangi Tribunal came out saying it would literally undo 184 years worth of work. You can look at things like how changing the principles changes the way the document's interpreted, which is a sleight of hand trick to justify this potential law, or the fact those principles that are in place now get derided as being created by unelected courts and lawyers because vilifying experts seems to be the go-to for bill supporters and coincidentally right-wing nutjobs, or that some people simplify the argument by falsely saying it's an agreement between races in the loudest dog whistle ever. But the trick is to show how those arguments and beliefs impact you personally or professionally, depending on if you're submitting as an individual or group. And you can read the proposed bill itself on the website if you haven't already. But absolutely do some research around what others have been saying. You'll need to decide, after all, if your submission is going to take the side of those 42 King's Council lawyers, the variety of church groups, international translators, the Waitangi Tribunal, hundreds of community groups, the Justice Department lawyers, Amnesty International, former prime ministers and politicians, historians, educators, constitutional experts, and the hundreds of thousands who were involved in the recent hikoi. Or the guy who Snapchatted 15-year-olds to get them involved in politics, apparently, but wasn't happy to see them at the hikoi. Use the arguments to inform your feedback. From a technical point of view, remember that submissions with swears and insults are not going to be accepted. You absolutely have a right to be pissed off at laws being proposed, but language like that is unparliamentary, and doing unparliamentary things might cause the speaker to short circuit, or maybe go viral worldwide if you're incorporating tikanga Māori challenges into the very British parliamentary process. But it will definitely mean that your submission's left out. So, as much as it's tempting to congratulate ACT Justice Committee member Todd Stevenson, who's also their art spokesperson, on finally reading something from a New Zealand author, it might be best not to. After all, he'll probably just scream something about reverse racism and threaten funding bodies. Oh, and because Te Reo Māori is an official language, you can make a submission in Te Reo Māori if you wish. Now, try and keep your submission to about a page long unless you're providing contextual evidence of some sort to back up your comments. With so many submissions coming through all the time and exponentially more expected for the Treaty Principles Bill, a succinct submission is going to help MPs digest it easier and speed up the process a little. You also have the option of making an oral submission. So if you get to speak to select committee members directly, you have a chance to do so. Possibly. With the sheer volume of responses expected, it's highly likely that not everyone who wants to make an oral submission is going to be able to do so. During the committee process on removing Māori wards, they actually split the committee into two, and they still couldn't get through everyone who wanted to submit. And it's possible that this will happen again here, but that's not yet been decided, and the committee won't confirm the oral submission process until the written submission process is complete. If you submit on behalf of an organisation, you'll get 10 minutes to talk, and if you submit as an individual, you'll get 5 minutes. But if you don't feel comfortable making an oral submission, then you don't have to. And oral submissions can be done in person in Parliament or virtually using Zoom, which is live streamed. And sometimes MPs might ask for more details or your perspective on these sessions. For the Treaty Principles Bill, submissions are open until January 7, 2025. The only way a late submission is accepted is if you can prove that you tried to upload it before that date and something went wrong with the process. And I know that there are people out there suggesting that you shouldn't bother because National and New Zealand First have said they won't support the bill in the second reading, but they also didn't say anything about rescinding smoke-free laws and tax breaks for tobacco companies, and they promised to use evidence to base their policy decisions on and clearly have ignored that. So making sure your voice is heard is the best way to, right now, make sure those parties are aware that flip-flopping on this will not win them any favours or votes. And in Cabinet, they can use an overwhelming majority of submissions as an argument against anyone trying to demand that they continue, or they'll break the coalition and walk away. So take some time to do some research. Find what the personal angle is on your reasons for your views. Write up a draft or two if you need to, proofread it. Put in extra pronouns to scare the New Zealand First members on the committee if you have to. But most importantly, continue to make sure your voice is heard. Hello there, kia ora. They say you can't beat Wellington on a good day, and Tuesday in Wellington, well, that was an excellent day. A day filled with aroha and kotahitanga as tens of thousands descended on Parliament, joining tens of thousands who had joined other legs of the nationwide hikoi mō te tiriti to protest against David Seymour's Treaty Principles Bill, a bill which would strip Māori of their treaty-enshrined right of tino rangatiratanga and everything that entails. More people than voted for the ACT Party signed a petition to stop the bill, and as images of the grounds and surrounding streets filled out, it showed that there were more people packed around Parliament than it might be possible to ever get an accurate count of. They were all there with a common goal. Not only did they make headlines around the world, they also inspired support hikois in London, New York, and across Australia. And all of that's resulted in what might be the single largest activation event the country has ever witnessed. On top of that, though, there was some other odd bits of messaging, like Erica Stanford saying that children should be in school and only allowed out on field trips or to join hikoi if it relates directly to specific elements of the curriculum. David Seymour putting out a video telling people to do their own research at his very specific website, which ignores all cultural factors, history, and sources that don't back him up. Winston Peters calling the hikoi a waste of time, and the Prime Minister saying he couldn't meet with the hikoi delegation because too many of them were affiliated with Te Pāti Māori. Mainstream media with headlines that told people to worry about disruption and chaos, and alternative media that, according to their indoctrinated followers, is the only source of truth in the country. Well, to them it was International Men's Day and nothing else. I guess they're just jealous of the numbers of people who supported Tuesday's kaupapa over their illegal occupation, but I'm sure the men that they're highlighting wouldn't be worried about comparing sizes of crowds. Yet the only chaos and disruptions actually came from outside influences. Destiny Church's Derek Tate waving a New Zealand flag and screaming about how the English own the country, and the man behind the Kiwi versus Iwi campaign, John Ansell, standing in front of the hikoi screaming at them before police moved them along on Monday. It was an historic day, one that in many ways was envisioned by the late Kingi Tuheitia when he called for kotahitanga before his passing earlier this year. And unfortunately, the mahi isn't over yet. Yesterday, submissions opened on Seymour's bill for Select Committee hearings. ACT sent out an email with a potential template for their followers to use to make submissions before asking for money. Don Brash has already stated he intends to make a submission, and you can expect that well-funded astroturfing groups aligned with ACT and the Atlas Group will soon offer the same sort of templates and encourage en masse to their followers to submit. Parliament is expecting, especially after Tuesday, for this to be the most submitted on bill ever. And it's vital that those who oppose the bill also submit and use their own words. But submissions are only open until January 7, right through the holiday period. Last week, I sat down with MP Shannon Halbert and I asked for his advice on preparing a submission. I figured he's been through the process before. On the receiving end of it, he might have some great advice that we can share. So here's what he had to say.
I always say keep your submissions simple. No more than one page, unless there's a whole need to add a bunch of research in there. Consider the like anything, you consider the audience. So when an MP is having to read a bunch of submissions, one page is a reasonable amount to get your points across. Also consider if it's just yourself as an individual or if it's a group, or that you do both. That's an opportunity to put forward your perspectives. The total number of submissions that are for and against do count with the select committee, so scale was important, and that's particularly what the likes of Hobson's Pledge would largely be focused on. But yeah, like you, Paul, I would avoid templated submissions because they all just get counted as one.
As loath as I am to do this, in the words of David Seymour, do your own research on the topic and make a submission, but actually use a range of sources to form your own opinions on the topic. Individual voices on the topic are far more important than form letters spamming Parliament inboxes written by the least imaginative people on the planet. I'll leave a link in the website below or the description below to the parliamentary website for submissions, so you can track it down if you need to, basically. But also remember, you can read other people's submissions when they get put up online. So if you want to make a submission that speaks to those, you're more than welcome to. You can also ask to make a verbal submission, but details on how that's going to be managed at the moment are kind of unknown and will depend on things like the volume of responses. Tuesday was epic. It was awesome. And it was a defining moment in our history happening right in front of us. But now it's time to make sure you have your voices heard in a different way. Hello there, kia ora, and welcome to this week's news. The ACT Party, seen here showing you what the monsters from the series From look like on their day off, began the week in defence mode after a powerful haka was burst into Parliament during their first reading of the Treaty Principles Bill. Mark Cameron demanded civil debate, while calling those involved in the haka barnyard animals. The official party account claimed young people should not be involved in protests, as footage resurfaced of David Seymour, who made headlines earlier this year for Snapchatting children because they were apparently future voters, encouraging students of charter schools to protest and perform a haka to save them. Seymour claimed Te Pāti Māori were given a free pass from media for their haka, while not answering questions on the whereabouts of and sudden resignation of former party president Tim Yago. And he also claimed that a democracy means each person having a say on the rules that run the country. And a bill put together without the input from one of the signatories of our founding document is the way to ensure that. On Saturday, New Zealand First MP Tanya Unkovic, seen here showing you all the words that she can read by herself when she uses her finger as a guide, spoke to crowds of dozen for the New Zealand Doctors Speaking Without Science event commemorating those who died suddenly from what they always assume is vaccine reactions, despite all of the evidence to the contrary. In her speech, Unkovic confirmed that everything she said in the House and every action she has done that legitimizes disinformation and peddlers of disinformation was sanctioned by party leader Winston Peters, who signed off on submissions she'd made to Parliament. Now, normally I'd put a joke in here, but clearly 6% of voters already did that. Saturday also saw South-styled Bishop Apostle Brian Tamaki seen here admitting to News Hub that he did know his followers were planning to paint over rainbow crossings in advance and still suffered no consequences from it, complaining that he wasn't getting enough attention lately. So he held a Make New Zealand Great Again hikoi, a mishmash of ideas to show that apparently his hikoi was going to be bigger than Hikoi Mō Te Tiriti, his haka more powerful than the one recently seen in Parliament, that only the New Zealand flag should be flown in the country at an event where Trump flags were flown. The illegal activity blocked off State Highway 1 while his followers walked the motorway without the correct permits after misleading police and saying the event involved vehicles, not people on roads. The police have said that they plan to come down hard on Tamaki so the courts can absolve him of all guilt like they did this week around the case where he broke COVID lockdown rules to organise another protest. David Seymour, seen here attempting to perform a human wave like a human, is being given credit for helping ensure the success of Wellington CBD businesses, with his ability to draw in tens of thousands of people to an area all to tell him to shut up. The Hikoi Mō Te Tiriti on Tuesday saw some Wellington CBD businesses claim that the day was the busiest that they'd seen in 3 years, after the Hikoi event itself finished. Wellington Regional Council reported that the event led to the largest ever numbers of public transport use the city had seen. So, of course, having high levels of public transport enabled foot traffic and not a car in sight means that everything that happened on Tuesday will somehow be blamed on Wellington City Council and bike lanes by the post. Gang patch bans came into effect this week, making public displays of some gang insignia illegal. The Attorney General did advise the government that this was inconsistent with the Bill of Rights, but they decided to go ahead with it anyway because allowing people to undertake criminal activity and not be identified is a good idea. As a quick guide, remember you can wear things like bulldog images in public as long as it's not gang specifically related, but you can't wear gang related content in public or your car or your home. But swastikas are fine. And if you're blocking off highways, intimidating people, targeting minority groups like the rainbow community, you can do so if you're wearing a gang patch that doesn't match the list the government has provided. But if your car has a patch on the dashboard parked overnight on the night this law comes into effect, the cop will swoop in at 3 minutes after midnight to ensure you don't hurt anyone. So it's a very clear and fair system. Richard Chambers has been named as the new police commissioner this week. Chambers rose to prominence as the police officer in charge of investigating groups looking into former National Party MP Todd Barclay when he made secret recordings of his staff to see if they were making fun of him, and the public noticed an apparent similarity between the two. Chambers has already signalled his aims of trying to build up public trust in the police force and is open to increased use of tactical police equipment and potentially more gun usage by police. Chambers had been working at international police organisation Interpol out of Europe before this position and is being touted by Police Minister Mark Mitchell as proof they can lure back police who have left the country recently if they offer them all the top job. The annual New Zealand Drug Use Survey was released this Thursday, which showed that the use of methamphetamine and cocaine had increased significantly in the past 12 months. The research paper describes the New Zealand drug market as saturated, but the government isn't concerned, saying at least gangs won't be wearing patches in public anymore because clearly we're tough on crime. Another survey released this week shows an extra 16,000 people have started smoking over the past 12 months, marking the first time that smoking numbers have increased in over a decade. Said Philip Morris spokesperson Casey Costello, "What a time to be a tobacco company, increased sales and tax breaks." Justice Minister Paul Goldsmith, showing how excited he is to write a propaganda piece for some of the richest people in New Zealand and call them biographies, this week announced 2 changes to name suppression laws around sexual offenders. The first would only allow name suppression of convicted offenders if victims agree to it. The second would automatically grant name suppression to victims of intimate recordings done without permission. These law changes have been welcomed by the victims of a prominent political figure who currently, at the time of recording, but maybe not the time of broadcast, has name suppression after being convicted earlier this year, saying, when it comes to sexual offending, well, they get to act in secret. Why should they get to keep that secrecy? At COP29 this week, rankings of countries were released on progress towards a more sustainable future, and New Zealand featured prominently for how quickly it had dropped 6 places in the rankings. While the country ranked highly for renewable energy due to our reliance on hydropower, policy changes instigated by the current government raised serious concerns about the ability to now reach 2050 climate change mitigation goals. Said Penny Simmons, Environment Minister, seen here telling you to lower your expectations to about here. It's nice that they think we're actually going to survive to 2050 to worry about it. On Thursday, the government received an open letter from 15 economists asking them to put a pause on current fiscal undertakings and rethink their plans because of the massive detrimental effects it's having on the New Zealand economy and society. Said Nicola Willis, seen here showing who the economists blame. Look over there! It's, not a ferry, but it's some sort of distraction, before escaping on a scooter. It was reported on Thursday that one of the participants of the first new youth offender boot camps has been accused of reoffending just 5 weeks after re-entering the community. Green Party MP Ricardo Menendez March, seen here hoping we all live long and prosper, said it was embarrassing the trial was failing so soon and showed the minister refused to acknowledge the evidence boot camps did not work. Said Children's Minister Karen Chow, seen here trying to see if she has pyrokinetic powers like Carrie, we will know more about the circumstances after we apprehend the person, but we made him faster and stronger, so he's proving kind of elusive at the moment. Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters, seen here pointing to what he's told are chemtrails by his voter base, this week claimed in the House that the recent Hikoi Mō Te Tiriti was nothing but an astroturfing event by Te Pāti Māori for political gain, and nothing at all like recent politically motivated campaigns like getting rid of Three Waters or the groundswell protests. Peters, seen here walking amongst the illegal parliamentary occupation in 2022 to try and build political power from groups susceptible to disinformation being funded by shadowy organisations that they refuse to declare, is still looking for a dictionary to find out what astroturfing actually means, and is believed to be asking the Taxpayers Union and ACT for advice on the topic. And finally, Sovereign Citizen aligned Hamilton City Councillor Andrew Bidder, seen here asking Waikato Times senior reporter Mike Mather why he won't report on chemtrails, has told media he is considering a run for the Waipa District Council mayoralty to replace the current mayor that he used ableist slurs at and refused to apologise over after being censured. Bidder, who has links to the sovereign citizen group the Hamilton Residents and Ratepayers Association, an organisation run by a convicted serious fraud offender. Bidder claims he'll surround himself with like-minded people and offer a common sense approach to the role, like telling everyone about the imminent threat of 15-minute cities and towns that take 10 minutes to get around, and that all council staff are indoctrinated by Klaus Schwab to further WEF grand plans for global world government. All things he actually claimed are happening in conversations he's had with Liz Gunn. So, clearly common sense. And that is this week's news. Hey, thanks for checking out this week's Omnibus edition. As I said before, it's a little bit shorter than usual, but if you haven't already, hit that like button, share, subscribe, maybe consider becoming a YouTube member. You get some stuff, like extra stuff, like emojis that you can use, or a couple of videos that we've got planned coming up that are just specifically for members, around a few changes that we're looking at making for 2025, which isn't that far away. That's kind of a scary thought. Anyway, have yourself a fantastic week, live long and prosper, and I will catch you guys all next time. Here. The links to other things that come at the end of YouTube videos. Those ones there.